DMV Real Estate, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And as always, we're happy and grateful that you've taken the time out to join us today. I have with me special guest, Jen Sherwood, and from Top to Bottom Services Home Inspections. We were supposed to have Dan Dees. Dan hurt his back. Dan, prayers and thoughts are with you. And hopefully we'll have you on next month sometime. Turn that thing off. Yeah.
How do I do that?
Just turn it off. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. We're going to lose that Facebook Live today, it looks like. Anyway, see if we can put it on again. Jen is actually going to share with us. Why is it playing like that? This card. Okay, now push.
Try again?
Yeah.
It's weird that it stopped without
I know,
touching
it's
it.
weird. Hi, Pam Dubois, DMV Real Estate, and I am not sure what's going on with our little Facebook page recording today, but we are actually starting over, Jen, with Top to Bottom, and Jen's going to talk to us about home inspections. First, Jen, tell us a little bit about yourself, and
I'm gonna...
Yeah.
I think it's timing it so that when you hit start, because you can watch the ride
Right.
go around, it's only going to give you a couple, a minute.
Okay. All right. How about we do this? Go to the camera.
I don't
Go to the
actually.
home page. Go to the home page. Sorry. And then go to the camera. Let's hear. Reggie's going to kill me.
You know what, though? In life, technical difficulties happen.
Technical difficulties. Sorry.
You got to just roll with it. Now we're filming.
How do we turn it around?
I mean, spin the
Yeah.
camera is one option.
Where?
Like, literally, physically spin the camera. But we can't see it at that point.
Yeah.
We're filming you right now. Hey, there you go.
Okay.
Third
Sorry
time's a
about
charm.
the interruption. So sorry about the interruption. Pam Dubois, DMV Real Estate. Today I have with me Jen Sherwood, Top to Bottom Inspections. We were supposed to have Dan Dietz, and he is not able to join us today, unfortunately, because he hurt his back. And Dan, our thoughts and prayers are with you. Hopefully we'll see you in another month or so. Everything will be okay. Jen, first share with us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with home inspections, some background information.
Sure. So I actually grew up in home inspections, essentially. My family had a home inspection company, and I grew up, picking up radon units on the way to sports practices and whatnot. And when I got older, I actually didn't want anything to do with the company and went out to Montana for undergrad and got my bachelor's in international relations. Moved back east to be closer to my family again. Ended up going to grad school and getting my master's, in economics and public policy, and then ultimately kind of backtracked and found my way into the home inspection field and company, and it turned out that I loved it. I liked being able to help people that way. And so I was the director of operations for the company up in Connecticut, which was or is one of the largest home inspection companies in New England, multi-inspector firm, doing well over $1 million in business every year. And after about 5 years there, I transitioned slightly, and Dan actually managed to convince me to come to Maryland here.
Oh, he did?
And,
so that's how you got to Maryland. Okay.
Yeah, I knew him through a networking group. We were in a mastermind group for inspectors or inspection companies.
Okay.
And he sort of got me interested in coming down and transitioning. So I worked very closely with the home inspectors, as well as I operate his mold company.
Oh, okay.
And so that's sort of where I come from and what I'm doing here in Maryland now.
Okay, so Dan brought you to Maryland.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, that's good to know. So first, tell us a little bit about your 200% guarantee. Not many companies actually do that out there. That sounds so good.
It is one of the things that makes us unique, and it really goes back to us wanting to serve our customers and serve them well. And so the 200% guarantee is if we go do a home inspection and for whatever reason the client's not satisfied with the inspection, we will not only refund their money,
Wow.
but we will also pay for the fee for them to have another licensed inspector do the inspection on the same property.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's excellent. Wow. Not many companies do that out there.
Yeah,
That's
no.
really good. Wow. And then also, so free consultation is one of the other things that you offer. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, basically, it's fairly simple. It just means we're more than happy to answer questions over the phone. It also means if you had a home inspection and bought the house, like, you buy a house and a few years later something's happening or you're not sure, you think maybe the inspector said something, but you can't recall. Of course, it's been years.
Right.
You can always call and talk to someone at the office or talk to an inspector and get answers, get more information, get advice, and we don't charge for any of that.
Oh, okay. That's also great because, things come up after people move in, buyers move in the property and they have questions and it's like, who do I call? And so that's
Exactly.
good that you actually do that. So walk us through a home inspection. For a first-time home buyer that's never had a home inspection, what should they expect?
So a home inspection, first and foremost, it's very important. And that's something that I think nowadays a lot of mortgages are requiring them. But people still don't necessarily understand, especially when you're buying a house. It can start to seem like everybody wants a cut of your money, right? You got to pay this guy for that and this person for this other thing and appraisals and titles and all these things.
Everything.
Right? Everything costs and you haven't even bought the house yet.
Right. All upfront fees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so with a home inspection, beyond the requirement, even if it's not required, what you're really trying to get a feel for is what state is the house in and the various systems. Not just what might be broken or problematic, but also things like if your hot water heater is meant to have a lifespan of approximately 10 to 15 years and it's a 12-year-old unit, that's something you as a consumer or general, home buyer may not recognize or know. And it's important to know so that you can plan
Budget for
to
it,
know
yeah.
that that's going to be an anticipated expense potentially in the next couple of years.
Okay.
Similar with things like roofs and other things that are bigger ticket items that it would be very helpful to know are coming potentially sooner than later.
Right.
In addition to obviously wanting to know if something is wrong with the house, because repairs are costly for some items.
Right.
And so having an idea of once you move in, what is it that you're going to be likely to deal with?
Yeah.
And making sure that you can make an informed choice about whether that is the house for you.
Right. Do you guys give estimates as you actually go through the home inspections and say, okay, this is, let's see, this HVAC system basically has probably got another maybe 5 years to it, please budget this amount of money or whatever for it?
We try to be careful only because since we aren't in the repairs industries, we don't have the ability to guarantee any of those numbers at this point. There are some systems that we're looking at that would give us the ability to put a more guaranteed or at least highly likely to be the case number on it. Typically, we can give somewhere in a ballpark, but we don't control those prices, and
that
so
makes sense,
we don't ever want to falsely, mislead because HVAC companies raise their prices and we just
All
didn't
the time,
know or anything like
Yeah,
that.
and it depends on what company it is actually because
Yeah.
prices can vary so much.
And with the geography of where we cover too, the pricing can be very different. Just depending Montgomery County versus DC versus other areas, the pricing can range immensely.
Yeah, and going through a home inspection, like what kind of items do you actually inspect?
So we are going to inspect the outside of the house, the grounds. We want to see things like, what is the condition of the landscaping, not from an aesthetic appearance. We're not going to tell you that bush is, not good looking, but we are going to tell you things like if the grading is, questionable, patios and decks and stability of those systems. We're also looking at the general structure of the house, things like the electrical systems, the plumbing systems. We want to look at the actual, walls themselves and windows and doors. We're looking for safety concerns as well as potential defects or problems.
Okay.
It is a non-invasive inspection, so if there's, let's say, you had a plumbing leak that's very small, like a pinhole leak behind a wall, our inspectors are not ripping out walls to check your pipes. So there are some limitations. It is based on what we can see and access.
Yeah,
but
makes
it
sense.
is the scope of the house, essentially.
Yeah, and how long would your typical home inspection take?
It varies a lot on square footage of the home as
Right.
well as sort of how much is going on. In addition
Exactly,
to
yeah,
people
yeah.
being on site, we encourage potential buyers to come and their realtor. And so if it's a buyer that has a lot of questions, obviously we're going to take the time to answer those.
Right.
On
So-
average, you're looking about 2 to 3 hours for
Yeah.
what we would call an average size house. Obviously, a much larger house would take much longer.
Right, right, and yes, of course, it does depend on how many questions you have as you go through the process and how much education the buyer needs from the
Precisely.
actual inspection itself. And you, apparently, you guys also do commercial.
Yes, we
You
do commercial building inspections as well.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about pre-listing inspections.
Pre-listing inspections are one of my favorite things to try and push, and one of the things people are most likely to want nothing to do with. The idea is before you list your house, or when you're getting ready, if you're going to sell your home, having an inspection done ahead of time.
Yeah.
People tend to shy away because they think they don't want to know. Because
Yeah.
if you know about things, you do have to disclose them.
Right. Right.
What they tend to not think about, and why I think they're so important to have pre-listing inspections, is if you know going into it what some of the hot items or bigger items are in the house, you have sort of two things you can do.
Yeah.
The littler things, like if you have a lot of electrical outlets that don't have covers on them,
Right.
that's going to get called out in an inspection. That's also a very easy thing to do yourself by going to
fix,
Home
right.
Depot if you have a screwdriver.
Right.
And so when a buyer's looking at your house, one of the things that can happen is if they get a report that has a lot of items, even if they're little items, it tends to feel overwhelming to that buyer. So the more
Right.
of those little ones that you can fix and take out of the way, the better.
Ahead of time, right? Makes total sense.
Exactly. It also allows you, if you choose, to make some of the other repairs. If you think, for example, that you need a new roof and you'd rather have it done rather than worry about making concessions, because if you wait for a buyer to find something, you're now somewhat at their mercy of what they're going to request, what they're going to want you to do,
Right.
even what vendor or contractor they might want you to use.
Yeah.
If you're the one who's driving the boat, so to speak, you get to decide what contractor you're using, who you're comfortable with, and how much money you want to put in.
Right.
Even if you make no repairs, one of the reasons to have a pre-listing inspection is to have a very realistic idea of whether you're priced relatively correctly and what is probably going to come out of negotiations down the line.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense to actually go ahead and do that ahead of time, so that way you actually know what to expect. And like you said, get a lot of little things out of the way, so you don't have to worry about those. And the buyer comes in and do their own inspections. A lot of it is already taken care of. You know, the
Precisely.
little things, and it doesn't look like a laundry list of things to do, basically. Radon.
Radon.
Okay, explain to us what radon is. Someone was asking me the other day, it's like, what is radon?
So radon is a gas.
Yeah.
And it's caused by the breakdown of uranium in the building materials and soil that we use. It is present in all sorts of environments, and you cannot smell it, you can't taste it, you can't see it.
Yeah.
It is the leading cause of lung cancer in the United States out for non-smokers.
Okay.
In smokers, it's the obviously second leading cause.
Right.
And so radon is just basically, it could be in your home. You're going to want to know because it's easy to fix. There's
Yeah.
mitigation systems that can get put in, and it's no longer an issue. But if you don't know it's there, you're not going to know
Right.
that you're potentially going to be,
Right.
be harmed by that.
Yeah, it's actually a good idea to even actually go ahead and do it if you're living in a home and you're not thinking about selling, you know, and you don't have a radon remediation in your home right now, to go ahead and get a radon test and just get it taken care of. I think
Absolutely.
they say in Maryland, the radon levels are really high. It's like 1 out of 3 homes, basically.
Yeah, it's quite high. And there's no way to predict. It's not by neighborhood. So
Yeah.
a lot of people say, well, my next door neighbor had it done and theirs was low.
Right.
That has no bearing on what your house is going to come up as.
Right.
That's just not how it works.
Yeah.
And we actually encourage, if you have a radon mitigation system, but it was installed a while ago, to still do a test.
To do it
Because you
anyway.
want to make
Okay,
sure
that
that
makes
system is
sense.
working.
Yeah, that's a good idea, is to go ahead and do it anyway, because you just don't know. It's like, yeah, the house right next door could actually show up not having radon, and then the one here has radon. So it's just
Exactly.
like, you know, it's like a hit or miss. So always, it's best to go ahead and check it and make sure everything is okay.
Precisely.
And so we get to talk about mold and
Mold.
mold inspections. Tell us about mold.
Mold is what I do. Mold is this thing that has sort of become a horrible, misunderstood we call it 4-letter word, right?
Right.
Mold kills deals.
Yeah. It does, yeah. It totally does. Yeah.
I mean, we would go out of our way back in my old inspection company to find ways to say mold that weren't mold, because as soon as that word came out of your mouth on an inspection, you can just watch the buyer mentally just check out.
Yeah.
They want nothing to do with it. And a lot of that has to do with more and more information is coming out about how mold can impact people as well as buildings. And there's also this idea that fixing a mold problem is just astronomically expensive.
It's expensive, right? That's what I've heard. Yeah, it's very expensive.
And so people tend to just think, look, it's going to be either way too expensive to fix or perhaps impossible to fix. Maybe we'll never get it, right?
Yeah.
And they don't want to deal with it because in the back of their mind is, you know, it's going to potentially harm my family.
Yeah.
And so forget it. I'm out. And a lot of those things are actually misunderstood.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are people who are taking advantage of the lack of knowledge and making it a bigger deal.
Oh, no.
Right? Trying to blow it up and become this, hey, everyone should be terrified, you know, move out of the house, don't. And the reality of the situation is not that extreme. Okay. Yes, mold absolutely can cause health impacts.
Yeah.
The primary way it does that is as an allergen. If you're allergic to mold, you react, and if you're not, you don't.
Yeah.
Just like any allergen, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, just because you're not allergic, if you do have a lot of mold in the house, you're going to want to fix it because humans can develop allergies over time.
Right.
Just from exposure. And that's the same, that's not mold specific, that's anything on the planet.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is there are some species of mold, a very small subset, where there's some data to show that they can cause health impacts in non-allergic and otherwise healthy individuals. Okay. Because mold can do things like trigger asthma for asthmatic individuals. Yeah. And obviously, like most things, immunocompromised people are more susceptible. But if you're just an average healthy human, there are some species that may cause more, it's called toxigenic. So they can cause negative health impacts and often more severe. Right now, as of today, the World Health Organization, EPA, and CDC are all unwilling to state definitively that that's the case.
Oh, really?
They say that there is research to indicate that there are correlations between mold exposure and these illnesses, but proving causation is very difficult just in science. Okay. So they're all still, you know, saying research is ongoing, and hopefully someday we will get to a point where we can definitively state that. In the meantime, everyone has to make their own choice. Personally, I think maybe err on the side of caution, right? And if there's a mold issue, figure it out, get it fixed. Yeah. That's the other side of it. So once upon a time, yes, the only way to solve a mold problem was start tearing stuff out. Right. Take the walls, take the insulation. If there's mold on one wall, take the other wall because you don't know what's behind there.
And the concrete walls,
Then you start, you know, whatever chemical product of the day is popular, start scrubbing stuff down, and then rebuild everything, right? So you're talking a week or more of time.
And thousands of dollars.
Tens of thousands of dollars often. So your family's displaced, you can't be in the house. And at the end of the day, didn't guarantee it was going to get all of the things. Because as mold grows, it puts spores in the air. Yeah. And so just taking out, you could gut a house entirely and still have elevated airborne mold. Wow. The good news is science
because you're really opening up the whole can of worms, basically.
And often, if you were to run a test in the air before you did demolition and then do demolition and run a test again, those numbers will have gone up. Because any colonies that were present just got disturbed. Right. And so they start putting more spores into the air because they're going essentially into survival mode. It's, you know, this is no longer a place we can live. It's like a sci-fi movie where everyone gets on a spaceship to Mars because Earth is going to die. You know, that concept.
So what do you, I mean, that sounds like, so how do you actually get rid of it?
So science has made a lot of improvements, and we have ways now to remediate mold where in many cases the walls don't all have to come out, or even in cases mold or the walls can all stay.
So you don't disturb the walls?
In a lot of cases. Basically, if the structural integrity is compromised, if the wall has been either wet long enough or had mold on it long enough where it looks as if, you know, you or I leaning on it would put us through the wall. Yeah. We can do a lot, but we can't magically make drywall repair itself. Okay. Maybe someday. Right? But for now, no. So in those cases, yes, you know, the walls would have to come. But those are extremes. Yeah. Most of the time, we can leave those walls in place. Okay. There are ways to treat behind walls where you can take off baseboards or put small holes in walls. And sometimes with permeable drywall, especially if it's new drywall where it doesn't have years of paint and other things, treating from the interior of the space will help with what's in the wall cavities themselves.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there are products out there. We use a particular product that's proprietary to us, and it's non-toxic, so it's not going to hurt anybody.
Good. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's
Because
really
chemical
good.
exposure is always something we want to be aware of.
Yeah.
And it's EPA registered and approved as a fungicide and a hospital grade disinfectant.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
it definitely not only will kill the mold, the other thing that it does to the mold that's more important even is breaks the spores themselves down. Because if you have an allergy to mold, or like I personally have asthma, so if I'm exposed to mold, it does trigger my asthma.
Yeah.
And if a spore is intact,
Yeah.
it's still an asthma trigger, it's still an allergen, because what you're reacting to is actually the protein in the spore, and dead and alive doesn't matter. So not only is the mold killed, our product breaks all of the pieces of the mold, the spores, down to their base amino acids.
Okay.
So they don't exist anymore.
Wow, that's good to know. That's
Absolutely.
really good to know. So you don't have to knock out, I mean, like the brick walls and things like that, because people, they hear mold and they run. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want this house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They panic. And now the seller, of course, panics too, because if someone else found mold and they know about it,
You have to disclose.
Legally.
Right. Yeah, once you disclose mold, people get very scared. They hear the word mold and it's like, oh my gosh. I'm highly allergic to mold. So I can actually walk into a house and go, okay, there's mold in here.
Yeah.
You know? So it's just one of those things that it's just like in realtor world, mold, and it's like, oh my gosh, mold. Tens of thousands of dollars, like you said, basically.
right.
So that's good to know that you can actually get rid of it completely without disturbing a lot of the walls and things like that. Like if you have the brick walls, you don't have to worry about all that.
Exactly.
Wow.
They can stay put.
Okay.
And so not only is it, obviously less invasive, it's less costly. Just because our scope of work, I don't have to pay a team of guys to be on site for a week to rip out and rebuild a thing.
Right.
So, our overhead being lower means the cost to the client is going to be lower, and our timeline of getting work done is much shorter.
Okay.
Typically, the actual work where we're on site is a day or less.
Oh, wow. That's
often-
really quick.
Yeah, an average basement we can do in a half a day.
Okay.
Now, we do ask, like, once we treat, because we apply our product on all the surfaces and into the air. It's a mist.
Okay.
Because all those airborne spores.
I was going to ask you about that. Okay.
Exactly.
So, yeah, okay.
So if you picture, like, a foggy room, that's sort of the idea. So we do, although the product's non-toxic, we do want people to stay out of where we treated.
Okay.
It would be great if they could for 72 hours. We also live in a real world where sometimes that's not viable.
Not possible.
So 12 to 24 is ideal as a minimum.
Okay.
And the idea, again, it's not about getting exposed to our chemical because it's not going to hurt
It's
you.
not a chemical. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not anything that's going to cause any sort of harm. But when you come in and out of a room, all the air exchanges. And so you're essentially diluting our product. And what we want is for it to have time to
Right,
be
to set in.
effective, to
Okay.
break those spores down and do what it's doing.
Okay, and that would make total sense. So they would have to move out, the seller would have to move out, or, do it, I guess basically if it's a vacant property, it makes it easier to do it that way too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if we're only doing part of the house, you can be in other parts of the house. So if we're doing the basement, you can be on the main level upstairs all you want. We'll put a little piece of plastic at the door or just shut the door depending on the circumstances.
Yeah.
And just don't open that door for a couple of
Right.
days.
Would it make more sense though to do the entire house if they're going to do the basement? That's what I would want to do.
Usually what we recommend, especially because often when we work with real estate, it's because the buyer already had something, either testing or had an inspector say that there might be mold. And so the seller is at the stage where they want to do what's required and really not much
And not
else.
more. Right, right.
In a perfect world, at a bare minimum, what we would want is to test all the levels.
Yeah.
Because although having an issue in the basement does not guarantee that you're going to have issues upstairs,
Right.
it could be. And
Yeah, I mean, it could travel, like you said. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And it has everything to do with individual houses and airflow through. And it's not even just the design of the house, but also, how your family, if you have a lot of kids and pets sprinting around, obviously more air is going to exchange
Right.
than a single person who's only home a couple hours a day.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, it makes more sense. So, as far as the mold test in itself, how long does that take normally to do a mold test? with you guys?
So they're actually, unlike radon that sits for a couple days, mold testing is something each sample, depending on circumstances, run 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
So depending on how many samples we're doing, the average mold testing appointment is from half an hour to an hour.
Okay. And how do you actually, okay, this sounds like an ignorant question here. How do you actually do a mold test? I mean, what do you do?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways to test. There's air testing and surface testing are the primary ones that come up in real estate.
Okay.
So a surface test is quite literally a surface test. We have a couple different ways to do it, or mediums we use depending on the surface itself. Basically a tape or a swab.
Okay,
and
just swab it.
yeah, they literally are just gonna poke at the thing that looks like mold, and we send it to a lab for analysis.
Okay.
Surface tests are somewhat limited because they're testing about an inch of that surface.
Okay.
But they are helpful to identify even just, is this thing mold?
Okay.
The air testing is what we tend to push a little harder, in part because, and this is going to sound silly, but if there's mold in a home, we make the general assumption that the average homeowner and their family are not going around licking the spots on the walls that look like mold to see what it tastes like, right?
Right.
Sounds silly, but when you talk about health impacts, you have to be exposed to a thing to have a health impact. If you're not licking the walls, that's not an exposure route, but you're breathing.
You're still breathing.
And you don't know what's in the air, and you can't see it. So that's what we want to know.
Yeah.
So we take air samples where we run an air pump, and it's basically just literally sucks air into a little cassette, a sample.
Yeah.
We send it to a lab for analysis. We do get results typically within 1 business day. Sometimes it's 2 if there's a holiday or, weather.
So that's not too bad. That's pretty good. A couple days.
Yeah, we try to stay, because we work with real estate where there's contingencies and, contract
You
periods.
have to get within that time period, right.
Exactly. And air testing, it's worth noting, is comparative. So almost always, weather permitting, there will be an outside sample taken as well. And the reason is mold occurs in nature. So there's mold, every room on the planet, there's mold. That's just a given.
So you do an outside test also?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Because what we're actually looking at is not, is there going to be mold in the house? Because that's easy. The answer is yes.
Right, yeah.
People don't want to hear that, but it's true.
Yeah.
But that's because there's mold outside and we come in and out. Our houses aren't airtight. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So what we're actually looking at is not, is there mold? It's based on the species types and the quantities. Is it, yeah, this is what we'd expect from normal airflow through a house.
Yeah.
Or, no, this is really indicative that the problem is sourced in the house.
Got
It's
it.
what we would call elevated.
Makes sense, yeah.
And so that's when, if the test is elevated, remediation or other actions would be recommended.
Right. I bet you'd find like 9 out of 10 times it comes back positive in homes. What do you think? Normally?
Actually, you'd be surprised.
Really?
There's a lot of houses that the person anticipates is going to be a problem and it doesn't come back elevated.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking, because it's like mold is everywhere.
It
Seems like it's everywhere. So you guys also do, that's great information about mold. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I learned so much about mold. Termite reports also as part of your home inspection?
Yeah, absolutely. They can do termite inspections, or it's wood-destroying insects, technically.
Okay. Now, do you guys also do you do the treatments for the termite inspections?
We do not.
You do not. Okay, so you would refer that out to another company.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then also, as part of the home inspection, you can do the lead-based paint.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And what does that entail?
So there's a couple different ways to go about that as well. We do offer XRF certification for lead paint, where they're using an XRF. I don't like using the term gun, but I think that's the term to evaluate. And the thing with an XRF is it can give you a lead-safe document where basically you're covered through time.
Okay.
Lead paint sampling, a lot of people want us to test for lead paint where it's maybe not applicable, because we stopped using lead paint as a society at a certain point in time.
Way back, yeah.
So our inspectors will, advise the client if they are asking. We're not in the business of doing services or tests that don't make sense, right, for the circumstances. So if it's a house that wasn't built till 1990, there's not lead paint.
No,
you don't need to be worried about that.
Right, no possibility. Just the ones before 1978.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, people just hear lead and get scared and they just want, all the tests. So we'll try to mitigate that. And then the actual lead paint test itself, if applicable, is that they will, again, similar to mold, take a sample and have analysis done and provide you with a report.
Okay, yeah. And you guys also do water test.
We do.
Yeah, water test and also suoscope. Yeah, so you pretty much do everything.
Yeah, we
pretty
sure
much do
try.
everything. Anything else you'd like to share with us?
I mean, we covered a lot.
Okay. Yeah, we did cover a lot, and a lot on mold, which
Yeah.
is great. We got some great information. We thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Dan, we miss you, and hopefully we'll actually have you next time. Top to bottom services, you guys are based out in Montgomery County, and you pretty much cover D.C., Maryland, and Virginia,
Yes.
everywhere? Okay. Thanks again for being with us. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week at 1:30, next Wednesday at 1:30 again. Looking forward to having a lender with us next week. Thanks. Have a great 4th of July, and we'll talk to you soon. Happy holidays.
Bye.
Bye-bye.